joined by former head teacher Leon Hady. Leon, thank you for being with us. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you. Thank you for having me.
£1.4 billion. That's a good start, surely.
There is an element where it's definitely a good start, and I think one of the things that's missing when people say £50 a head is it's not going to go on every child. So some students are obviously going to get a lot more money spent on them than that £50, and obviously some students aren't going to be in need. So it won't balance out in that way. It does make for a great headline, but yeah, I do think in some aspects it's a good start. But yes, it does fall short of what the professionals in the situation say is needed.
What is needed from your point of view then?
So the SAR that was put in place to actually review this, obviously he had his amount, and I think I was hearing on Twitter earlier today he's considering his position because obviously he feels like he wasn't backed in any way, and he was left up as a bit of a fall guy in that space and institution. But really the way that we're actually going to get this is by helping parents also to help their kids, and also not trying to put all the pressure on teachers and schools. So we need to actually have some of this diverted to extracurricular resources. Even if we're using the school buildings, we're getting other professionals to actually come in and do different items, different work with the children. The blame or the emphasis on this shouldn't all come from schools. It has to come from wider society too.
So longer school days wouldn't necessarily mean longer time in the classroom, which would be quite a challenge for pupils. You're talking about those curricular activities afterwards that would be led by non-teachers as such, because again, we've got to think about longer school days being an extra pressure on teachers themselves.
100%. And when you actually look at different items, and especially if you just look at private schools, again, I'm fortunate enough to send my children to some. They end the day at 3, but they don't come home till 6 because they're 2.5 hours of extracurricular items set into different things where experts come in to deliver various lessons to them. And that's the kind of thing that we want in all public schools as well for our children. If you think about this with head teachers and the way that we may talk about things, a bit of it falls under pupil premium, or the idea of pupil premium in terms of how we would help people with catch up and assistance for those who need it most. But then also specialisms. Certain schools have technology or drama specialisms, or at least they did. And so there was extra funding going towards those things where, again, the experts and the different opportunities were available. So I wouldn't think about this as an academic kind of boost in the first instance. Obviously, the tutoring will hopefully cover that. The 5 million overall that the government's put into the Oak National Academy as well to support access for students who hopefully supported by their parents and their teachers will access those things. There's a lot of things that the government has put seeds of into place, and I'm sure in the future they will see, and they know that's not enough. But in time, when the next spending review comes along, they will look to personalise this a little bit more and add to the funds. You don't want to, excuse my phraseology, but spend everything on the table on the first throw of the dice. You want to kind of pace yourself. And I'm sure as we learn more about what the real impact of post-lockdown is, and we learn more about how children need to be supported, there'll be other released funds coming in time as well. But as of today, in and of itself, not enough.
But even if COVID hadn't happened, you as a former head teacher, you'll be wanting to see these changes anyway, wouldn't you?
100%. The idea of actually we've been stripping back on libraries, we strip back on community centres, we strip back on music and sports and arts in school. But all of that is the elephant in the room is always everything in our schools is based around exams. And because we have a set time frame for exams, everything has to kind of be triggered and geared towards exams, sadly. That's what schools are judged on and what obviously parents understand best. So until that elephant in the room is taken care of, all of this will only ever point in one direction, and that is having everything shaping towards catching people up for a SAT exam at a certain point of the year, all of which is needless.
And so that catching up process, bearing in mind the impact the last year has had on schooling, how realistic is it for children really who have seriously missed out to catch up on all of this?
Well, there's a huge difference between catching up for a 5 to 7-year-old as there is for someone who's 14, 15. So again, we're talking about different things. Some students aren't catching up at all. Some students are thriving. But really what we're trying to do here is we're trying to get in a situation where we try and round off an education in a better way than just doing what we call catch up. I completely agree with what the previous person or the previous segment in your show mentioned with regards to trying to actually bring more extracurricular and human side to what we do, or the relationship side of education and skills and development rather than the academic focus. And we're going to see over time that the government is not going to be blind to that, because you simply couldn't be for that long. I know that might be slightly optimistic, but if you look at the steps the government has taken over time, specifically with education, you can see a lot of missteps. But if you look overall at how they helped the business communities, how they helped with the furlough scheme, etc., it may just take a little more of a time for this to unwind and show. And maybe obviously the NHS or the teaching profession is ones they can take slight advantage of. They know they'll have more patience than others, but eventually, ultimately, we have to kind of plug and support this wider idea of education in all our schools, not just those who are privileged to have it.
Leon, thank you very much for that. Great to hear from you today. Leon Hady.
Thank you.